very beginning of the RPA-CA. This is your residential purchase agreement. You'll notice it also says and joint escrow instructions. Back in the day, what used to happen, you get your home in escrow and you sent hire contract to escrow, and they had to basically retype your contract as escrow instructions. Now, parts of your residential purchase agreement are joint escrow instructions, which is why on page 10 you see a place for the escrow officer to sign. So it's taken a lot of the work off for escrow officer to have to what we've already had signed off. So at the top of the page, you're going to see where it says date prepared. That is the date that you are putting together this contract. This needs to be filled out. Now, your client's signature, they can sign same day or after. But their signature, when the sellers or when the buyers and sellers sign this, it cannot be before that prepared date. So in other words, today is July 21st. You can't have a prepared date of July 21st and have people sign it the 20th. That doesn't work. But their dates for their signatures could be the 21st or after, or a date after. Now, anytime on any of your other forms that come after this, for instance, a counteroffer. Counteroffer is going to refer to, this is a counteroffer to the RPA dated. And this prepared date is the date that you are going to put in that blank. This is the reference date. This is an offer from, and the buyer's names are going to go on this line on 1A. So all the buyers for the property, their names go there. And then the address of the property, the city, the county, the zip code, and the assessor's parcel number. So let's say that this is in, let's say you don't know what the parcel number is. Well, the parcel number should be in the MLS, and the parcel number would be in the property profile. And you should always pull a property profile prior to writing the offer. You need to see what the seller's names are, because you're going to need to fill that in. You need to see what it's going to show as far as, does the square footage on the property profile match up with what's in the MLS? If there's not, it gives you an opportunity to, before writing an offer, to ask questions. They'll also give you the assessor's parcel number. Yes, in 1A, if the buyer is an LLC or some sort of an entity, you can there. However, when it comes time for signatures, let's say it's BBB LLC. Okay, that's fine, but on the signature lines, it's got to be the name of the person who is authorized to sign for that LLC, that entity. It can't be signed as BBB LLC. It's got to be the name of the person who is authorized to sign. So that is why you're going to need your RCSD and other paperwork. So who's authorized? We'll get into that in more detail at another time. The offered price. Now here's a clue. If you fill in the numerical offered price, it will write it out. It will, if in zip forms, it will go ahead and fill that out. Okay, but you need it both written out and the numerical. And then on 1D, this is an either or situation. Okay, on close of escrow, it's either going to be on, you're either going to check the box there and write in a specific date, or you're going to check the box and write in a number of days after acceptance, such as 30 days. Now, you also want to make sure that you go in and check your calendar. When you guys get an offer accepted, go and check the calendar and make sure that that close of escrow date doesn't fall on a weekend or a holiday. Otherwise, you guys are going to need to, parties are going to need to decide, are we going to close a little earlier for that weekend? Are we going to close, so let's say the 30 days falls on Saturday. Are we going to try to close this on Friday, day before? So maybe it's a 29-day escrow. Or are we going to be closing like the Tuesday after? And I say Tuesday because do not want things closing. I do not want a buyer to fund one day, fund on a Friday, and not close, record until Monday, because they're paying interest over the weekend for a property that they don't own yet, they can't take possession of. So I don't want somebody paying interest over the weekend on something that, hey Philip, would you check your mic, please? Thanks. I don't want somebody paying interest over a weekend when they don't own the house. So if it falls like that, generally, and I've got one like that right now, we've moved it so that it's, rather than close on Saturday, which would be our 30 days, could have moved it up, but that really wouldn't have worked well for the seller. So instead, we're closing on Tuesday. Just some little things to be mindful of. All right, so this is an either or. Either a specific date is written in or a number of days. One of or the two, but not both. Okay, now, Section 2. Section 2A is saying that the parties are acknowledging that they have received a copy of the AD. AD, as you will no, I did not say don't close on a Friday. Did not say that. That if it looks like it's going to fund on a Friday and close on a Monday, that's 2 days of a weekend that if it funds on Friday and can't close till Monday, the buyers are going to pay interest over the weekend. So you might want to fund it on a Monday and close on a Tuesday. Okay, so on item 2A is your AD, your agency disclosure, which was the first thing in your RPA packet. That is always the first thing that the client is going to sign. Without fail, they do not sign anything else until they have signed that agency disclosure form. Oh, never mind what's on the right side of my screen. That's my Adobe. Because I've got this as, I have saved this as a PDF. Okay, so 2B, I want y'all to take really good notes here because this becomes a problem. A lot of agents do not fill this out correctly and then have to go back later and correct it by using a confirmation of agency form, the AC form. So just do it right the first time. You don't have to go back and do additional paperwork. So on 2B, seller's brokerage firm name goes there, and the company license number. Then you'll see check boxes. If in this case, I'm the listing agent, and let's say John Smith is the buyer's agent, John Smith is with a different company, with ABC Realty. So what we're going to do is you know what? I'm going to switch this up. Y'all bear with me for just a second. It's out of your screen. Bear with me for just a second. Okay. All right. I'm going to fill in a couple of blanks here. However many numbers there are. Okay. Good. Now you're up to date because I have filled in all my blanks so far. Now, all right. So the seller's firm, let's say that you are representing the buyer. Okay. You're representing the buyer. So the seller's firm is ABC Realty. Right, that's their brokerage number, and they're going to represent the seller only. So you make sure that this box gets checked. This is where agents mess up. They either only fill out their portion, or they don't check the boxes, or they don't fill in the license numbers. All of this is required. See, the thinking for some agents is, oh, well, I'm not going to fill out the other agent's side. They can go back and fill that in. No, they cannot, because once you have had somebody sign the document, you're not supposed to alter the document. You have to counter it. So, or add an AC. So what I did is I said ABC Realty represents the seller. So I checked the seller box. That automatically, look what that did. That automatically checked that this is the seller's agent. So I'm going to say Mark Franklin is the seller's agent. And I'm going to put his number in. You can look this up on the DRE site. If you cannot see, you should see the agent's name and their DRE number on the full MLS printout. Can't find it, go to the DRE site and look it up. I'm making up numbers, by the way. Okay, so the buyer's brokerage firm, you are representing the buyer. Right? Our number goes here. And we're just representing the buyer. We're not representing both sides, we're representing the buyer. And this is your name, would go here. And your DRE number. Okay. All right. This is how this should look. Yes, a cover sheet is very helpful in your CAR, in your zip forms. You have a cover sheet. Now, here's a tip regarding using the cover sheet. Don't fill in every tiny thing on that cover sheet, because if you fill in too much, it can cause problems as well. Okay, so all right, now let's say that the seller's brokerage was eXp Realty. Say that right? And eXp Realty is also representing the other side. Then you've got a change to make. This is what it needs to look like. Anytime eXp Realty appears as the brokerage for both sides of the transaction, the proper box to be checked is both buyer and seller. It is a dual agent situation. Even if you personally are not representing both sides of the transaction, if I'm representing one side as an agent and you're representing the other side, we're both with the same company. So imagine eXp Realty as a big umbrella. We're under that umbrella. So it's still dual agency. And this is another problem that we see. We see that agents will come in, they'll put the same agency for both sides, but then they try to check that one is representing the seller and one is representing the buyer. That is impossible. When you are both with the same company, it is always a dual agency. No escaping it. Okay, so if you're both representing, you or another agent are with eXp, eXp appears in both of these lines for the brokerage firm names. And it's always going, the box that's always going to be checked is both buyer and seller. Always. Okay, any questions on that?
Hi, Debbie. It's
Hi.
Singla. Could you kindly click on full screen at the top of the page that you're at, just to increase the size of the form?
That's as much as it gets. What you can do though is up on the presentation screen, you'll see a little up in the upper right, you will see a little magnifying glass thing. Click on that and that will bring it closer to you.
Yeah, I've done that already, but
yeah, this is as good as it gets.
Debbie, I think if you click on the full screen up in the toolbar.
I'm on full screen.
No. Are you really? What?
On my computer, I'm on full screen.
Do you see by the save button up top? It says full screen there. Have you clicked on that?
Wait a minute. On, I'm sorry, what?
See where it says save on the upper bar, the upper toolbar?
Hang on. Yeah. Yes. Oh, I see what you're talking about. Okay, like that.
There you go.
Guys?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Okay.
Thank you.
I was in my little box at the top.
I never knew you could do that until a while back either.
Okay, cool. All right.
Thank you for that tip. Awesome.
That is great. Thank you, guys. Perfect. Okay. Any questions about how to fill out 2B?
Debbie, I have a question. What if I receive an offer and none of those boxes are checked? What do I do to remedy that?
Okay, what you're going to do is you're going to tell them, you're going to fill out an AC form, the confirmation of agency, correcting that. And that will be part of your counteroffer.
Okay, thank you.
We'll attach that to your counteroffer. And if it's a situation where you weren't going to counter before, well, you are now. You're countering and adding that.
All right, thank you.
No problem. I see a hand up back there and I can't tell who it is.
That's me.
Hey, Crystalline.
Yeah, what if there's more than one agent?
One agent, you would put both agents' names on here. So you could say Mark Franklin and Mary Dodd.
Okay,
And then you can do over here. Do that.
okay, thank you.
No problem. Okay. Any other questions on this section?
Debbie, I do have a question.
Nathan. Hang on. Nathan, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I had a question. What if it's for sale by owner?
Oh, okay, great. So let's say the seller brokerage and the for sale by owner does not want representation. Write in FISBO SNA. Then you're going to take that out. Take this number out. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right.
stand for?
Sorry.
What does SNA stand for?
Okay, that's going to be, instead of you having an agency with that seller, they don't want representation, you'll use the seller non-agency form. And that shows that we are not representing the seller in this. The seller is unrepresented by anyone. We are only representing the buyer.
Thank you.
And there is a buyer non-agency as well, a BNA, if the case is, if somehow it was reversed. Okay, is that Jenny? Jamie, sorry, I can't read from where I am.
That's okay. You might have said this already, but let's say eXp is the brokerage for the buyer and the seller, but they're different agents. So would that be
It's always going to be dual agency.
even for the agent's name?
Yes, ma'am. It's going to be, what you're going to have here is, it's going to be, look at what I've got here. Hang on just a second. This out. Okay, there you go. That's how it will look.
But the buyer's agent is, let's say, Jamie Giacobbe.
That's right.
It would still be both buyer and seller.
Absolutely.
Okay.
If eXp appears on both sides, it is always dual agency.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, other questions on this? I see, is that Monica? I see somebody's hand up in the front
Hi,
here.
Debbie. I think it's mine.
Hi.
Hi. So by putting both agents' names on one line, would that eliminate having to use the AAA
No, it
form?
does not.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Okay. So let's move on here. All right. AAA is additional agent acknowledgement. All right, now, item C is going to be checked because the PRBS, the possible representation of more than one buyer or seller, that's part of your RPA packet as well. And you would have already had them sign that also. This is just confirming those things. Now we're going to get into the financing terms. Maximum allowed, or the maximum deposit, earnest money deposit, state of California is equal to 3% of the agreed upon purchase price. So if you wrote an offer and the buyer said, I want my offer to look really great, so let's do an earnest money deposit of 5%. And okay, great. But then the deal fell apart, and after they removed all contingencies and the seller was able to keep the deposit, the seller could not keep more than 3%. That's state law. The other 2% would go back to the buyer. Now, because of that, it makes no sense really to do an initial deposit of more than 3%, because the seller can't keep it anyway. But right now in this market, when really looking for every way possible to sweeten an offer, having a strong deposit part of that. So let's say the offered price is $700,000. 3% of that would be $21,000. Okay. Now, you're not required. Vicki, your mic is on. Vicki, would you mute your mic, please? Thank you. Okay, so you're not required. There's not a requirement to do 3%, 2%, 1%, but I'll tell you this. Actually, I want your opinion on it. You've got a $700,000 offer. You're the listing agent, and you see that they've come in with only a $5,000 deposit. What's your thought regarding that?
They're not serious.
They're not serious. It's too small. Yeah. Limping into the deal. I like that, Carlos. I like that.
What does a proof of funds look like?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Okay. So now let's say they did. Okay, how does that look? Does that look reasonable?
Yes.
Yeah, when you know that, okay, 21,000 is the max, that's 3% of the 700,000. That's not bad. Now, I'm going to have a conversation. Anytime the deposit is less than 3% of their offered price, I am going to have a conversation with the sellers, because this is their decision. I can't emphasize this enough. We don't make these decisions regarding what's acceptable and what is not acceptable. Clients make those decisions. Fastest way to get yourself into a legal pickle or complaint is to start making decisions for the client. We see this stuff come into the broker room every day. Well, I asked my agent to do this, and my agent did this instead. It wasn't your call. That's the client's call. Your job is to educate. Now, on a VA, they still need an earnest money deposit. I know if it's 100% VA, no down payment, no closing costs. Yeah, they still need a deposit. That deposit's not going to look anything like this. It's going to be much smaller, but they do need an earnest money deposit. That is good faith money. All right, now let's take this back up just so that we've be at 3%. This makes us look strong here. Now, you see all of these other places that you could check a box and what have you. Just leave it blank. Leave it blank. Buyer shall deliver deposit directly to escrow holder by electronic funds transfer. That's wiring. Or cashier's check, personal check, or other within 3 business days after acceptance. Don't have to, yeah, you don't have to go in and write anything. Leave it blank, it's fine. They give choice of how they want to deliver that money to escrow. Here's the one thing I will tell you. You, as the agent, are never, ever, ever, under any circumstance, to touch the money. Buyer's going on vacation. They want to give me their check, their cashier's check, whatever, and have me deliver it to escrow. No, absolutely not. You do, and I find out about it, you are not going to want to have that conversation with me. Here's why. One of the first things the DRE will come after us on in an audit. First thing they will want to see is a trust log. So if you have touched the money, it is supposed to be logged into a trust log and logged back out of the trust log, showing what happened to that money. I took the money and I sent it to escrow on this date. Here's the amount of it, etc. That's what a trust log is for. We do not have a trust log. And actually at my last company, that trust log was such a mess because agents would come in, they would log something in, and then they would forget to log it out. Or they would forget to log it at all. And if the DRE comes in and audits, they are going to want to see the trust log if there is one. This is serious stuff, guys. I don't care how much you want to help your clients. You are never under any circumstances to touch money of any kind. And this means no deposit on leases, no first month lease amount. No, oh, can you please give this check to the home inspector for me? Can you run this over to the contractor? I can't be there for the home inspection, but if I give you the check, would you give it to the home inspector? No, no, no. Don't do it. Okay? There are no exceptions to this rule. All right. Now, EMD is earnest money deposit. So, in this case, the buyer has to make arrangements, get that money to escrow once their offer is accepted. Okay. All right, so we're going to leave all of this other stuff on 1A blank. Now, how should an inspector be paid? Directly from the buyer. Directly from the client who hired them. But you're never going to handle that. And don't pay for it yourself, guys. Stay clear of that kind of thing. Yeah, it's on the day of inspection. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So if the ratified contract was sent on Saturday, what date does it start to?
The next day.
Okay, it will be Sunday. Will be the first day.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Somebody just asked, what if the buyer can't be there? Well, that's their problem. They're going to have to figure out how to pay the inspector themselves. They cannot give you the money and have you hand it to the inspector. There are no exceptions to that. I am not going to lose my license over something like that. Okay. Now, your buyer's deposit goes toward their down payment and closing cost. That's credited toward their total down payment and closing cost. Now, an increased deposit, generally, you're not going to have one. Not going to have one. And there is a separate form for this. Let's say, yeah, Nick, that is correct. If both the buyer and seller are being represented by anyone at eXp, it's dual agency. Okay. Let's say, well, we had this situation ourselves at one. We were buying an investment property, and we were doing a 1031 exchange. We were selling an investment property and buying another one, so a 1031 exchange. And we were in escrow, but you've only got a certain amount of time to get an offer accepted on a placement property when you're doing a 1031 exchange. So we had some money in our savings account, but we didn't have 3%. We were closing escrow on our first investment property. We were closing that within 7 days, 10 days, something like that. It was imminent. Everything had. So we were all good on that. But we just didn't have, and I'm going to go back up here and I'm going to change it 5,000, so it works with my. So 5,000 or $500,000 would have been a $15,000 maximum. So, and it was a different market. And with a $5,000 deposit. Okay. Now, didn't fill anything in here. We waited to see if they would counter it. Well, the parties did counter us. And they countered us that within 14 days after acceptance of the offer, we would increase our deposits. We would add another $10,000. Okay? We would add another $10,000. Now, we didn't write it up this way. We wrote it with this. They countered us, stating that, okay, we want a total 3%. We understand that you're not going to have the rest of the money for a bit, but in 14 days, you're to deposit another $10,000. Make a full 3% deposit. Okay, great. Now I want you to read with me here. If the parties agree to liquidated damages, they also agree to incorporate the increased deposit into the liquidated damages amount in a separate liquidated damages clause, CAR Form RID, at the time the increased deposit is delivered to the escrow holder, which means at the time we delivered that additional $10,000 in deposit money to escrow, we should have had to have signed the RID form. The RID form was new at the time that we were doing this. I knew about it. I was already teaching it in classes. But because we were going to a different area, we were purchasing a property out in La Quinta, investment property, and I didn't know the area well enough. So we used a realtor out in that area. And neither she nor the listing agent, who were both in the same company, by the way, knew about the RID. And as a buyer, I didn't say anything about it. We agreed that we would deposit that additional $10,000 in 14 days, so that we would have a full 3% EMD. That's great. But without the RID form marries the two deposits, the initial deposit with the increased deposit, making them one big deposit for purposes of liquidated damages. Meaning, we filled out the RID, marrying the initial deposit and the increased deposit together as one. Had we backed out of the escrow, had the escrow canceled after we removed all of our contingencies, our full $15,000 deposit would have been in jeopardy. Sellers could have kept that money. Now, neither one of the agents used the RID. And I didn't say anything. I was just acting as the buyer on the property. I was not acting as an agent. I had fully disclosed that I was a real estate licensee. However, I wasn't acting as an agent. They did not have us sign the RID, marrying those two deposits together. So, because they did not do that, had the escrow canceled, here's what that conversation with the seller would have looked like. I imagine you're the listing agent. Hey, Mr. Seller, I've got some bad news. The buyers for your property, they've canceled. Now they've removed all of their contingencies, but yeah, they've canceled. And the seller said, Judith, would you turn off your mic? Thanks. Seller says, well, hey, well, you know, that's really a bummer, but they removed all their contingencies. So we're going to go, at least we get to keep their $15,000. Now imagine yourself as the agent who did not get the RID signed. Now you have to explain that because that RID was never put into effect, never signed off, oops, the only thing the seller can come after is that initial deposit of $5,000. Because that initial deposit and that increased deposit weren't married together using the RID form. Now, you do not want to be in the position of having to explain to your seller why they can't keep that full deposit because you didn't do what you needed to do. Make sure the two deposits were married together as one for purposes of liquidated damages.
Debbie?
Yes.
Does an RID form have to be signed by also the buyer, or is it just?
You'll have to look that up, and we will go over it at another time in full. I'm giving you the overview of it now because we're in the increased deposit section. But go through, find it, and read it.
Thank you.
Debbie?
Yes.
When is it possible for the buyer to get back their deposit if they back out of the sale?
That is a great question. If they have not removed their contingencies contractually, they should be eligible to get it, and they've canceled with reason, contractual reason, not just they changed their mind, but a contractual reason. They should be able to get their deposit back once so I'm representing the buyer. The buyer has decided, you know what? I was reading the HOA docs last night and I do not like this, whatever it is. That's a deal breaker. We're out of this. We're not gonna move forward. So buyer's agent needs to put together the cancellation of contract, the CC, have the buyer sign it. check the box saying that the buyers to get their deposit back, send it to the listing agent, and then the listing agent would present it to the sellers. If the sellers sign off on it, great, buyers would get their deposit back. If the seller says, I'm not doing it, listing agent says, well, here's the thing, they have not removed their contingency. So contractually, they do have the right to get their deposit back. And if you try to keep their deposit without good reason, there could be you could be liable for a civil fine of $1,000. I don't care. I'm still not giving it back. Okay, so buyer's agent. You had the buyers sign that cancellation. You send it to the listing agent. Make sure you also send it to, whether, even if the sellers have not signed it, as long as your side has signed it, send it to escrow. So the escrow officer has it, knows that it's canceling. They'll prepare their cancellation instructions. Now, if both sides will not agree to how that money is to be dispersed, that deposit is going to sit in escrow trust account, until there is a meeting of the minds, or an arbitration award or judicial decision reached regarding that deposit.
They don't have the 3-day rescission time?
There is no 3-day rescission in a purchase.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
What was a good reason for them to want to keep the deposit? Can you give an example for that?
Some sellers are just, I took my house off the market for these people. I feel like I've been damaged because I took my house off the market. Now they're canceling. Well, Mr. Seller, they haven't removed all of their contingencies. They have the right. The reason that they have given matches with a contingency that they have not removed. They hadn't removed their investigation contingency, or they hadn't removed this contingency or that contingency, and they're canceling based on that contingency still in place. So they have the right to cancel, and they have the right to get their deposit back.
And would this be with multiple offers, or would this just be with one offer?
This is once they're in escrow.
Copy. Thank you.
Yeah.
Some old-fashioned agents write in RPA or encounters, after certain days, initial deposit will be released. Is it legal or is it okay?
If the parties sign off on it, yes, it is legal.
What if they have an inspection and the inspection comes back that there's issues with the house?
Okay, and the seller's not willing to do anything about it, and the buyer hasn't removed their contingency for that, then they have the right to cancel. And they should have the right to get their deposit back if they have not removed that contingency. However, the law is not black and white, folks. The law is just not black and white. Contract, you can read that contract to that seller till you're blue in the face, saying that by law, the buyer has the right to get their deposit back. And the seller says, pound sand, I'm not going to give it back. Now you have a dispute. Okay, and this is what you need to know about earnest money disputes. Earnest money disputes are between the parties. Now, tell me who the parties are. Open your mic.
Buyer and seller.
Buyers and sellers. Are agents parties?
No.
No.
Are their companies parties?
On the buyer.
Correct. So do not get involved in this. When there is a dispute regarding the deposit, that is strictly between the parties, the buyer and the seller. Resolve. We must step back. And we tell agents this till we're blue in the face. You get involved in
Hey,
something.
Debbie, I have a quick question on the. Oh,
hang
I'm
on.
sorry.
If you get involved in the middle of something that you should not be involved in, you are setting yourself up to be included in any legal action that's down the pipe. Okay, so now who was talking? Go ahead.
Oh,
Raina.
Okay, I'm sorry, Debbie. It's just a quick question regarding the RID. As you were saying, let's just say if I'm representing the buyer, and we get countered requesting that they want an increased deposit, but the listing agent did not include the RID. Would it be on me to take the initiative and include that of the RID, or put it on the fault on their end because they didn't submit that?
Is it in the best interest of your buyer for you to do that?
Nope.
Correct.
No, that's what I figured. So yeah, okay. I just wanted to make sure.
Now let's switch that up a little bit. You are representing the buyer. I'm representing the seller, and we're both with the same company. And I give you the RID. Now, do you have an obligation?
No.
Yes. Your dual agency.
Yes, you do.
Your dual agency, and in dual agency, you have to play totally fair and honest and equal with both sides. Well, I hate dual agency. So you would come to me and say, you forgot the RID.
You agree, Gil? Yes. With consistency in 20 minutes. Very right. Yeah.
The RID has nothing to do with going over 3%. That's to do with an initial and a secondary and increased deposit.
Debbie, I have a question. I have a situation right now. My buyer is putting down 3%, but he's including it in the total purchase price. So his loan is the deposit minus the offer price.
Well, your earnest money deposit is going to be credited toward the down payment and closing costs.
But what if it's just towards the offer price and not going to be credited toward the closing costs?
No, it can't be. This is good faith money. This is money that goes into escrow up front.
Okay, thank you.
And even if it's a cash offer, it's going to go, they're still going to have closing costs. So it's still going to go toward closing cost for the home. So, and then anything over that they would get, they would get back. But yeah, you've always got to have something in here in the initial deposit. This is your consideration. And I know y'all learned that when you were about consideration. That comes up every time I have to do my education. Okay, Karika, did you have your hand up?
Yes, Debbie. Hi, this is Karika. I have a quick question. So I had a situation where I had an all-cash buyer or all-cash offer. It was accepted, and I did a 5-day, but then a 3-day for disclosures to be received, and it was well past the 5 days. We went in and did our due diligence, but we didn't have the disclosures, and so they kept asking for the EMD, and I said, well, we don't even have our disclosures.
Well, no, the EMD is contractually due in escrow within 3 business days after acceptance. It has nothing to do with getting the disclosures.
But how do you cancel the contingencies if you don't have disclosures?
Okay, totally separate thing.
Okay.
Actually, you have in this contract, you have built-in time. One of your timelines is 3 business days after acceptance for that deposit to be in. That is not, if we get A, B, and C. It's not. It's once that offer is accepted, that deposit goes into escrow within 3 days.
3 business days.
3 business days. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Now, let's say on this, we're going to keep this simple because most of the time you're not going to have an increase to deal with. All right, let's say that this is a cash offer. If this is a cash offer, I would check this box. Okay, on item C here. This is no loan is needed to purchase the property, and this offer is not contingent on the buyer obtaining a loan. Written verification of sufficient funds to close this transaction is attached to this offer, or if this box is checked, the buyer shall within 3 days after acceptance deliver to seller such verification. Guys, get into the habit of having all of this stuff ready to go with your offer. If I have multiple offers and I have let's say I have 2 offers. Offer A, they have included their proof of funds and their pre-approval letter from the lender. And offer B, telling me they'll get it to me once their offer's accepted within, 3 days or whatever. Which one's stronger?
Okay.
The one that shows me proof. Show me the money. Show me that you qualify. Show me that you've got the money. Another reason I want that proof of funds up front with the offer, because let's say this offer was written $500,000, okay? And let's say the list price was not $500,000. The list price was $520,000. Well, before I counter, I'm going to go over all of this with the sellers, and the sellers, let's say the sellers say, well, the offer is clean except $20,000 below our list price. We want to get that up. So let's counter them to $515,000. We'll give a little, but let's take it up $15,000. I want to look at that proof of funds as the listing agent. I want to look at that proof of funds and make sure they've got enough money able to come up in price. They may be putting every dime that they currently have into this and not have any money to spare. In which case, it does us no good to counter higher. They can't do it. They may qualify higher, but that doesn't mean they have the cash to make it happen. Just because somebody qualifies something doesn't mean they have the funds to make it happen. Remember that. And you need proof. And guess what? This applies when you're on the buyer side too. You want to spend all day driving people around and showing them properties without knowing for sure that they qualify and have the wherewithal to make it happen? And do you know how ridiculous and inexperienced you look if you write an offer and then it's found out that, oops, they didn't have enough money? That's your job, to check it out, no matter which side you're on. And I'll tell you what, nobody gets in my car to go see a property unless I know that they are fully qualified and have the necessary funds to be able to make it happen. I know how to write really great offers. I don't need to practice. And I don't want my reputation ruined out there by putting stuff out there that has there's no way that it can come to fruition. You're going to find the real estate community, no matter how big it seems, area, it's very small when it comes down to people knowing who the stinkers are. Oh, be very careful of putting an offer in with this, accepting an offer from this person unless you've checked out their buyer thoroughly, because they just put it out there and hope it'll stick. And I've known that about agents in the past. The community that I've worked in, I knew anytime a specific agent, mine now, he's retired, but anytime he would write an offer, I knew he was just writing these offers, hoping it would work out on a wing and a prayer. But he did not have the proof of funds. He didn't have everything tied down. And so good agents out there would counter him in a heartbeat with wanting all the necessary paperwork up front before they would agree to accept his offer. Oh, well, they're good for it. They'll have this in. No. He had to bow out of more transactions. Those clients couldn't perform, and that damaged his reputation. Professional. I don't want that for you guys. Okay, let's say this is not a cash offer. Let's say that there's going to be a loan. Okay, loan is great. So, got my trusty little calculator here. Let's say my folks are going to put, this is a $500,000 offer. And they're going to put 10% down, so 500,000 times 90% equals, the loan amount is going to be 450,000. Okay? Now, the default here is conventional. Your loan is going to be FHA, VA, seller financing, assumed financing, anything else. Other could be even USDA loan. If it's going to be anything other than conventional, you need to check the appropriate box or fill in what kind of loan is it going to be. And you always fill in your interest rates. This is where working with buyers, I'm going to reach out to my lender. And I'm going to ask my lender, what's the current interest rate on a conventional 90% loan right now? What's the ballpark on that? Okay, and I know depends on credit, things like that, but ballpark. And he says, okay,
275.
Okay, so 2.7. Let's say he says 2.75. Okay, great. I'm going to write 3. Not to exceed 3%. I'm going to give it a buffer because, and we don't see this real often, but I've lived through it. Been in the business a long time. You know what I'm talking about. There are times when the market is volatile. And there were times when the interest rates would change 6-7 times in a given day. So interest rate at noon would not be the interest rate at 5 p.m. It was just crazy. And those little changes that were made, and they weren't low interest rates like this either. Talking well in excess of 9%. But we'd have to check with the lender right before writing that offer. And buyers were locking in their interest rates as quickly as possible after their offer was accepted. They were changing so fast. Now, this is not only am I going to put in something here, but I'm going to go down where it says buyer shall pay points not to exceed. Yeah. Now, this is not how you explain this to the buyer. This is not tying them to a 3% loan with 1 point. Not. This just states that in the event the interest rates and points exceed this before they remove their loan contingent, they have an out on their contract if they want to take it. It is protection for them. Buyer's agents, your job is to protect your clients. So anytime you are writing an offer and not filling in the terms on this, you are not protecting the client. What are points? Google it. Listen, this is something else I want you guys to get used to. Go in and Google things. Get a lot of great information. You guys have to be detective sometimes. Go in and do your due diligence. Check these things out. Google is your friend. Okay? And the brokers are good, but the brokers are not Google. Right? Now it's just quicker to ask a broker. Yeah, we've got over 7,500 of you. Your help with things like that. So anywhere you can go do a little homework and get an answer, we appreciate it. And then if you have questions about it, of course, reach out. All right. So in this case, I protected my buyer because if prior to them removing their loan contingency, the interest rate exceeds 3% and 1 point, they have an out on their contract if they want to take it. Now they could say, yeah, interest rate went to 3 1/8. Yeah, we'll take it. Want the house that bad. Okay, great. They have choices. Now, if you leave this blank, okay, if you leave this blank, this is saying they have to accept whatever. They have no out based on the fact that the interest rate went up or the points went up. You have not protected the buyer. Now, if I'm on the listing side and I get an offer and this isn't filled in, I'm not countering it. I don't represent the buyer. No, best prevailing rate is not acceptable. Absolutely not. Okay, make sure that that when you represent the buyer, that buyer is protected. As a listing agent, ABC Realty sends me an offer. And none of this is filled out. No skin off my nose. I don't represent that buyer. I'm sad for that buyer because their agent didn't. Okay, but right now, I am going to put in, because I am representing the buyer, I am going to protect them. They're getting a conventional loan, 3% down, 1%, 1 point. Now, very seldom will you see this in this market, but if there is also a second loan being taken out at the same time, you would do the same thing for a second loan. We're not currently in that kind of a market right now. James, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I have a question about the interest rate with the points. Is that something you need to clear with the loan officer prior to submit your offer?
What I do is I call my lender and I'll say, okay, I'm writing an offer for it because my lender's working with this buyer. Hey, I'm writing an offer for Linda, and what are the current? It's already pre-approved her. What's current interest rate that we're looking at? And he'll tell me, And I'll say, okay, if I write it, he says 2.75. If I write it at 3, we're going to be okay. Is there much of a chance that it's going to exceed that? You know, and I'll have a discussion with him about it. So yeah, I am going to run this by the lender. I work hand in hand with my lender. Okay.
What if you change your mind and later and do, instead of conventional like VA or whatever FHA, do you have to do some addendum?
Oh, absolutely. You would do an AEA, amendment to existing agreement, if that offer's already been accepted.
And Debbie,
Yeah.
on the not to exceed interest rate, it kind of confuses me because, like, if the lender says it's 2.75 today, and he said that conversation with the buyer, what if the buyer says,
Okay, I'm going to have a conversation with the buyer, and I'm going to say, this is not committing you to 3%.
but what if they say, well, let's just leave it at 2.75?
We could.
Okay.
We could, but I'm explaining it to them, and I've never had one come back at me and say, oh, let's just leave it at whatever. I tell them we do a little buffer here, just in case the interest rate goes above. Now, and it's not much of a buffer, it's just a buffer.
I've tried to explain it, and it's hard for me to explain because I guess I don't get it. The buffer benefits them because what?
Could I explain?
Please, somebody.
Excuse me?
If they will be still qualifying, but interest rate jump like 7%, they can exit. Because lenders say, yeah, you're okay, you qualified, but the buyer wouldn't want to get loan for 7%. This is the exit for them, right, Debbie?
That is correct.
But if they haven't removed the contingency and it's at 2.75 and it jumps up to 7, they could still cancel.
If
they cannot cancel if loan approved.
Wait a minute. As long as you've got an interest rate put in here, if it exceeds that,
yeah,
then and they have not removed their loan contingency, yes, they have an out. Your question has to do with why would you put a buffer in? Because sometimes interest rates are adjusting a little bit. And I want them to still have that, they still want to have that little bit of wiggle room on that.
Is it just to make the offer cleaner, or?
It's cleaner. It's also, they're not out of, they're still held in there because the interest rate hasn't gone above 3. So interest rate today could be 2.75, but interest rates could be a little volatile. And before we want to have them, trying to think of the best way we've done it like this for so long. I just know it, but to explain it, we want them still under contract if it bumps a little bit, but it's still saying, hey, if it goes above this, you have an out. So now, I'll tell you, Neil, if you want bottom line on this, yeah, it gives a sense of security. Yeah. The bottom line on this is if it's 2.75 and you want to put it at 2, and the buyers want you to say 2.75, do it.
Well, and I thought while you were explaining, does it make it look better to the seller? Maybe that's the reason. It makes it a stronger offer to the seller.
It can. And as the listing agent, I'm also checking out the interest rates because there have been times where somebody's put a really low interest rate in, and I want to know from my lender, is this, for this type of loan, is this even reasonable?
So I had a street sweeper drive by, but to me, for me to explain it to the buyer why it benefits them, it makes sense to me if it makes it look like a strong.
Well, I tell them, look, you may not, let's say it's a 45-day escrow. And for their loan program, the lender is saying, really can't, or let's say it's a 60-day escrow, and the lender says, okay, can't, without incurring more of a cost, you can't really lock in your rate until you're within 30 days or less, okay? So we know what the interest rate is now, but we don't know what it's going to be in 2 weeks or a month. We may give a little buffer there.
Okay.
They lock the rate by calling their lender. We don't do that.
Debbie, I have a question on this.
Sorry?
Oh, I have a question.
Go ahead.
So just adding in the percentages, does that give them an out even after the contingency is removed?
No, it
or
does
just
not.
During the period. Okay.
Only while that contingency applies.
Okay, thank you.
Debbie, I have a question. This is
Yeah.
Helen Davis. One, I wanted to, as far as the buffer, we were talking about adding the buffer, not adding the buffer. If I was similar to what you were saying, if I'm the listing agent and I'm receiving the offer and I know that interest rates are kind of bouncing around, the buffer from a seller's agent's perspective does say, okay, there's a little bit of wiggle room because we know the interest rates are moving. And if it's at 2.75 and we know it could jump up to 3, we don't want to see 2.75 because it gives them pretty much an automatic out if they want it.
Exactly.
Okay, so it doesn't necessarily make it stronger, but it lets me as a listing agent recognize that, okay, at least they gave a little bit of wiggle room if that interest rate changes.
Thank you for that.
They're not going to bail on us. The second thing is that Robert Blackwell in the chat had asked a question that I would like to echo, and that is, if we're dual agents, here we're, I'm representing, say, the buyer, someone else is representing or I'm representing the seller, and someone else from eXp is representing the buyer. How does this play into the dual agency or being a dual agent?
That's an interesting question. So buyer's agent doesn't fill it out. Listing agent, same company, looks at that. And you're in a dual agent situation. Yeah, my tendency would be go back and counter and add those terms in.
Great, thank you very much.
Dual agency, it's tricky. There are people out there just looking to come after you on dual agency.
My concern is that we have so many, with the increasing growth rate of eXp agents, it just seems like, there's going to be many encounters of being in this dual agent situation.
Exactly. So you need to know where some of the pitfalls are.
Yeah. Again, thank you very much, Debbie.
No problem.
Debbie, question.
Go ahead.
How do you write the terms if you have a down payment assistance program such as CalHAFA with a 3% down payment grant plus the 97% loan amount?
Well, this is where I am going to contact my lender too. Lender's going to help me with this. But if it's a 3% down and there's going to be assistance, I'm writing based on the 3% down payment. In other additional financing terms down here on item E, I'm going to write in that they are getting, they are part of this assistance program. Give details there.
Okay, and then how would you for the okay, so you would just put they're getting 3% down payment assistance or some wordage like that?
No, you're three exactly. That they're part of CalHAF. This is a CalHAF loan, so I'm going to go in here first of all and put in that it's CalHAFA. Going to add that into that's the type of loan we're going to have. You're 3% down. So it's the offered price times 97% is going to give you your first loan amount. And then in terms regarding the CalHAFA, I will put in my additional.
Right, and then you wouldn't have to, you can't show proof of funds, obviously, that way.
You can show, you'll show the letter, the CalHAFA letter, which shows the commitment for those funds.
Got it. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Another form of proof of funds, by the way, let's say you have a buyer who is selling another property and their funds are coming from that other property. Now they're still going to need funds for a initial deposit, right? But let's say the majority of their down payment or what have you is coming from the sale of their home. So obviously they're not going to have that money sitting in the bank, but have escrow put together the estimated seller's net sheet from that property. That will show the proceeds that that seller should be getting from that property.
Debbie, I have a question on that. Where would we notate the proceeds that are being put down as a final down payment from the sale of the buyer's property?
Not what's going to happen. Well, what's going to happen is you fill out your deposit and your loan amount. It's going to automatically fill in item F, which is the balance of the down payment or purchase price. The balance is going to automatically fill that in. You're just going to have to show a proof of some sort that the buyer is going to have that money. They're pulling that money from savings, IRA, what have you. You'll have those bank summaries. If they're pulling it from the sale of another property, you'll have their estimated closing statement from their escrow.
Okay, and do we notate that somewhere?
No, you're just, well, not, hang with me for when we get to page 2. I think that I think that'll answer your question.
Okay, I just thought there should probably be a close of escrow date estimated so that they know when the escrow is closing.
Well, there's several. You've got a COP. If this is going to be contingent upon them closing on another escrow to be able to purchase this, you have a COP. And you'll be adding paperwork to that to show that, yes, they have an offer accepted or whatever.
Okay, so it's a COP form because I do have a transaction like that.
Contingency on purchase.
Okay.
Okay, now let's say that the buyer needs help with closing costs. This is where this comes in. It comes in on item 3E on page 1. Do not stick this back in several pages into your contract. This is a financing term. And let's say the seller, let's say the buyer needs help with closing costs. One way to do that, seller to credit buyer 3% toward, or no, I'm sorry, seller to pay buyer closing cost not to exceed 3% of agreed upon purchase price. Okay, now that can be another percentage, that can be a flat fee, flat amount. Seller to pay buyer closing cost not to exceed, whatever you fill in here, of the agreed upon purchase price. Or yes, if it's subject to 1031 exchange, you can write that in as well. Subject to 1031 exchange at no cost to seller. Write that in. Okay, but this is where if you're asking for the seller to pay any buyer closing costs, this is where that goes. You don't have to say recurring and non-recurring. I can always tell an agent who has been in the business a while or who has been taught by somebody who's been in the business a while, because we used to have to say that. But now you don't have to do that. So no longer have to do that. Closing cost or closing cost.
Question. For the loan percentage, we would just get that from the pre-approval letter from the lender, right? And then bump it up to whatever?
Yeah, or I'm going to have, even better, have a conversation with the lender. I want to confirm everything. I want to hear it.
Thanks.
No problem. Okay.
Hi, Debbie.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm sorry. You said we don't have to add recurring or non-recurring closing cost anymore?
No.
Is that what?
Nope.
Okay, yeah, because I was at the RPA class with Ryan, Rosas, and Gina, and they had asked us to put that in there, so.
Not have to do that.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
What if it's a VA loan? Does that make a difference?
I don't believe so, no. But ask your lender before you write this in.
Okay, thank you.
So Debbie, is it that the lender determines closing cost period, so it doesn't matter if it's recurring or non-recurring? That's a new thing. Is that correct?
Well, recurring and non-recurring, recurring cost or non-recurring costs are like your escrow fees, your title fees. Those would be non-recurring. Those are going to be paid once. Recurring fees would be, recurring costs would be, I'm thinking for a loan. Give me an example. I'm blanking on it, guys.
Your insurance, taxes.
There, thank you. I was thinking taxes. So taxes, insurances. Yeah. There you go.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And we're just asking them to pay up to a certain amount of those.
Hey, Debbie, I had to step away when you explained the buyer shall pay points not to exceed 1%. Could you explain the reason for that?
That's just what I put in. Contact your lender, find out how much the points are going to be. And I always buffer it a little. So if he tells me there's no points, you can either write in 0 there, that's fine. Or you can bump it a little bit. You can put 0.5%.
Debbie?
Thank you.
Debbie, when is day one?
Day one is the day after the offer has been signed off, accepted by all parties.
What does it mean? If I prepare it today, my buyer signed it in 2 days, seller signed in 5 days, and I sign it in.
Doesn't matter when you sign, you're not a party.
So just buy last signature of buyer or seller, right?
Exactly. The time will start the day after that.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Wait, I have a question. When you're sending an offer in, that you're as an agent, you're not signing it. I thought you sign it at the same time as the buyer sells it or signs it. Sorry.
You're signing that, yeah, but I think she's talking, the way I interpreted it was talking about a confirmation. Maybe initialing on a confirmation. But yes, you as the agent sign page 10 when your buyer signs.
Thanks.
Or when your seller signs.
Hey, Debbie, I got a question. In regards to the day one, would the counters kind of like supersede the RPA? So like, what if we're going back and forth with counters several days after they've accepted our offer and sent us back the counter? Would it be the last day that they both agree on that counter? Or?
Well, wait a minute. Once the offer is accepted, there are no more counters on.
I mean, a lot of times they send the offer back signed with the counter, and then if we sign the counter and agree to it, then we move into escrow.
Right.
So I'm saying, like, if my buyer's taking 2 to 3 days to decide whether or not he wants to agree to that counter, would that date that he signs that counter be day one, or would it still go back?
It's the date the last person signs the last item, either the offer or the last counter. If there's no counter, it would be the day after the last person signed the offer. But if there's counter, it's the day the last person signed the last counter.
Okay, great.
Yep.
So that's also known as once it's fully executed, the next day starts.
That's right. That's right. And that does not mean, confirmation section does not count. So, because you've got a ratified offer, whether that confirmation is dated or not.
Oh, so the confirmation doesn't have to be signed. It's when the offer is fully executed. I got you. Because sometimes I thought that fully executed is when it's confirmed, but that's not true.
No, because if you read the bold, it will tell you that.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay, so guys, if you're to wrap this up, if you filled in your interest or your deposit amount, your loan amount, it's going to give you an automatic down here of the balance of the down payment or purchase price. And then it will all add up again to your offered price. So 35,000 plus 450,000 plus 15,000 should equal 500,000 offered price. That's how you check your math. Okay, now next week, we're going to start in on page 2 of the RPA. So please join me then. And we're a couple minutes over, but I want to thank you all for being here today and for the great questions. So we'll do this again next week.
Thank you, Debbie.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you, Debbie. This class always rocks.
Thank you. I love getting to do it with you guys.